The chandelier flickered above the long mahogany table as laughter turned sharp, like glass breaking in velvet. Emma Carter sat at the far end silent, invisible, while her brother raised his wine and announced she would never see a penny of their father's fortune. No one noticed the tremor in her hand, or the calm that followed it. Because Emma wasn't powerless. She was patient, and the secret she carried would turn that glittering room of arrogance into a stage for reckoning. The chandelier above the dining table glowed like a frozen sun, scattering sharp light across 23 crystal plates and silver forks, polished to mirror perfection. Every reflection seemed to compete for attention, just like the people seated around the table. At the far end, near the kitchen door, Emma Carter sat quietly, her hands folded around a simple glass of water. It was Thanksgiving night at the Carter estate in Boston, a house that looked more like a museum than a home. The air smelled of roasted turkey, expensive perfume, and restrained judgment. At the head of the table, Michael Carter, the eldest brother, carved the turkey with a precision that belonged more in a boardroom presentation than a family meal. He wore his father's old seat as if it were a crown. His laughter filled the room, confident, rehearsed, hollow. Beside him sat his wife, Lauren, radiant in diamonds and satin, describing their upcoming trip to the Maldives. Her voice rose and fell with the same rhythm as her bracelets, each gesture a reminder of wealth. Across from her, Ryan Carter, the youngest sibling, animatedly described his tech startup, a company that had not yet made a profit but had already hosted 2 launch parties. Their mother, Eleanor, sipped champagne with the delicate pride of a woman who had never poured her own drink. She was already discussing her charity gala for next spring, a modest event that would cost $200,000. Emma listened. She had learned long ago that in this family, silence was safer than honesty. Her cardigan was plain beige, her hair neatly tied, her smile practiced but thin. "Emma," Michael called, slicing through the chatter like his carving knife through the turkey. "Still driving that old Camry, huh?" A soft chuckle rippled around the table. Lauren leaned forward, her tone sugar-sweet but razor-edged. "People might think we hired the help, dear." Ryan grinned, raising his wine glass. "Hey, maybe she's saving up. Teachers don't make much, right? What's the going rate these days? 40,000? Their mother set her glass down with a soft chime. "Your father dreamed bigger than this, Emma," she said. "You were supposed to do something meaningful." Emma inhaled slowly. Her fingers tightened around the glass. The reflection of the chandelier trembled across the water's surface. "Teaching is meaningful," she said gently. Michael's smile thinned. "It's not about meaning. It's about appearances. The Carters have a legacy to uphold." The word legacy hung in the air like perfume that had gone sour. Lauren crossed her legs, her diamonds catching the light. "You know," she added, "when people see you pull up in that old car, they wonder if you're really one of us." Emma looked at her sister-in-law, and for a heartbeat, her calm faltered. "It still runs fine," she replied softly. Michael set down the carving knife. The sound was sharp. "It's not about running, Emma. It's about reputation. About how we look." "You never understood that," the laughter died. The air grew heavier, pressing down like the weight of the chandelier above them. Emma's pulse thudded in her ears, but her face remained serene. Then, in a tone meant to sound casual, but sharpened with intent, Michael said, "Mom and I have been speaking with the lawyers. We're restructuring Dad's trust." Eleanor nodded, not looking at Emma. Michael continued, his voice smooth as glass. "We've decided it's time to consolidate the assets, to focus on those who actually contribute to the family name." Emma looked up slowly. "And what does that mean?" "It means," Michael said, pausing for effect, "you won't see a penny, Emma." The room fell silent. Even the chandelier light seemed to dim. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Lauren's smile remained frozen in place. Eleanor kept her gaze on her plate, pretending to adjust her napkin. Emma swallowed. The sound was louder than it should have been. "That's your choice to make," she said quietly. Michael leaned back in his chair, a small, cruel smile tugging at his mouth. "Actually," he said, "it's ours." For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the clinking of a distant fork, somewhere near the far end of the table. Emma's hands loosened around her glass. The water shimmered beneath the chandelier's fractured light. She looked down the length of the table at her brothers, her mother, her sister-in-law, and realized how far she had drifted from them. 8 years since her father's death, and still, she was the outsider. But as she sat there, something inside her shifted. Not anger, something quieter, steadier. The camera of imagination would hold on her face, calm but unreadable. And as the scene faded, her voice would rise, clear and measured. They thought I was powerless. They had no idea. The night air outside the Carter estate felt colder than it should have. It pressed against Emma's skin as she walked alone across the stone driveway toward her car. Laughter still floated from the dining room behind her. Crystal still chimed. Someone was pouring more wine. She unlocked her Toyota Camry. The car was 10 years old and carried the quiet scent of paper, ink, and the faint trace of classroom dry erase markers. She slid into the driver's seat and shut the door. Only then did the silence arrive. Her hands stayed on the steering wheel, but she did not start the engine right away. Her heartbeat was loud in the empty car. Her throat stung in that familiar way that meant tears were coming whether she allowed them or not. For 8 years she had trained herself not to cry in front of them. Now, in the dark, there was no one left to protect. Her first tear fell like betrayal. Michael's voice still echoed in her head. "You will not see a penny." He had said it smoothly, almost like a toast, as if cutting her out of her own father's legacy was not cruelty, but good governance. Her mother had not defended her. Ryan had laughed. Lauren had smiled. Emma swallowed, and another tear cut down her cheek. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and let her eyes close. "I let them talk to me like that for 8 years. She whispered into the dark. Her voice shook. "That is on me." She had never said those words out loud before. Saying them hurt. The admission landed somewhere deep, where shame and anger had been quietly growing in the dark like roots. She sat up, started the engine, and pulled away from the house. The Carter home shrank in her rearview mirror, a mansion with tall windows and flawless uplighting, a monument to the version of success her family worshipped. The glow of it faded behind her as she drove through the quiet Boston suburbs. Lawns were trimmed. Trees were wrapped in early holiday lights. Wreaths were already on some of the doors. Warm kitchens. Safe rooms. The private comfort of people who believed they would always be taken care of. The streetlights washed across the windshield in slow pulses. Emma wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater and forced herself to breathe steadily again. She could not go into her apartment looking shattered. She knew herself well enough to know this. If she let herself fall apart completely, she might take too long to get back up. Her apartment building was older. The paint along the hallway baseboards was chipped. One of the overhead bulbs in the stairwell hummed with a faint, tired buzz. She unlocked her door and stepped into the small living room. The silence there did not feel empty. It felt honest. She flicked on the floor lamp. Soft amber light filled the room instead of chandelier light. There was no marble table here, only a second-hand couch and a bookshelf with graded essays stacked in uneven piles. The heating pipes clicked awake. Emma set her keys down, slipped off her shoes, and went straight to the framed photo on the bookshelf. Her father, Henry Carter. In the picture, he was sitting on a porch, not in a boardroom. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbow. His hand was on her shoulder. He was not posing like a legacy. He was looking at her. Emma touched the edge of the frame with her fingertips. "Dad," she whispered. "I tried. I really did." Her throat tightened again. She closed her eyes, and memory rose like a tide. It was the final autumn before he died. The leaves in their yard had turned that impossible gold that only lasts a few days before winter claims it. She had been home from graduate school for the weekend. She remembered sitting with him at the old wooden table in the sunroom. She could still feel the light on her skin. She could still hear the way he spoke to her then, not as if she were fragile, but as if she were already carrying something important. "Emma," he had said quietly, There is something you need to understand about money. She had laughed at that. I do not even have money. That is why I am telling you, he said. His tone had been patient but firm. Money does not create character. It exposes it, she had frowned. That sounds like something you would stitch on a pillow. It should be engraved in stone, he had replied. He had leaned forward then, his eyes clear and steady. Listen to me. Wealth is a mirror. It shows you who a person really is. If money makes someone generous, respectful, and grounded, that was already in them. If money makes someone arrogant, cruel, and careless with other people, that was already in them too. The money just turned up the volume. Emma had looked down at her hands. What if the money reveals something ugly? Then, Henry had said, you have a choice. Mercy can teach, but mercy can also blind. You will have to decide which it is. Why me? She had asked. Because, he had said, and his voice had softened in that way she had heard only a few times in her life. You are the only one in this family who does not confuse having money with being worth something. The memory dissolved, and the quiet of the apartment returned. Emma exhaled, slow and shaking. She pressed her palm flat against the photograph. I miss you, she breathed. She walked to the kitchen, boiled water, and poured tea into a chipped white mug. Steam curled into the air, soft and steady. She sat at her small table. The table had scratches. The chair at school sometimes wobbled when she leaned too far. The things in her life were not impressive, but they were hers. Not gifted, not subsidized, not flaunted. On the table was a stack of essays from her 7th graders. What does success mean to you? She had asked them. She picked one up, more to steady her hands than to work. The handwriting was uneven. The first line read, Success is making sure my little brother eats before I do. Her vision blurred again. They had mocked her for being a teacher. They had called her life small. Yet here, in this small life, she held the only thing in that entire dinner room that still resembled honor. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. A message from Ryan. Hope you are not too upset. It is just business. You know how this works? Another message, this one from Lauren. If you need help with budgeting, I know a counselor who works with women at your income level. She specializes in cases like yours. It is nothing to be ashamed of. Emma stared at the messages. Her jaw trembled with a flash of anger so clean it almost felt like light. Cases. Like yours. At your income level, it was not. Just that they thought she did not deserve a share. It was that they believed she did not belong. The phone buzzed again, and this time the number on the screen made her sit up straighter. Whitmore and Gray Law Firm, Henry Carter's estate attorneys. For a second, she did not move. Her heartbeat rose. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, pressed her shoulders back, and answered. Ms. Carter, a male voice said, calm, controlled, older. This is Richard Whitmore. I apologize for the hour. It is all right, Emma said softly. I am awake. I received several messages from your brother Michael tonight, Whitmore continued. He informed me that the family has decided to restructure your father's trust and that you will no longer be included in future distributions. Emma let the words sit in the air. He mentioned that at dinner, she said. There was a pause on the line. When Whitmore spoke again, his tone had changed. It was still professional, but there was something under it now. Something like restraint. Miss Carter, he said, I need to be very clear with you. Your brother does not have the authority to make that decision. Emma did not speak. Not yet. She could feel the air in the room tighten, as if the walls were listening. Whitmore continued, slower now. In fact, he said, I do not believe your family understands who, under the terms of your father's estate, actually holds that authority. Emma felt the first hint of heat rise at the base of her spine. Not embarrassment. Not fear, something else. Something awake. What are you saying? She asked. I think, Whitmore said. There is something you need to hear before your family does. Emma's breath caught. For a moment she could hear only the soft hiss of her own radiator and the faint hum of city traffic outside her window. Whitmore's voice was steady. I would like you to come to my office in the morning. 10 o'clock. We will be meeting with all relevant parties. I want you present. Emma straightened in her chair. The exhaustion in her bones did not vanish, but it shifted, the way deep earth shifts before a fault line splits. I will be there, she said. Good, Whitmore replied. And Emma. He almost never used first names. She could hear that in the way he said it. Yes, she whispered. Do not let them provoke you tonight, he said. Rest. You are going to need a very clear head. When the call ended, Emma sat in the quiet for a long time. Her eyes lingered on the photo of her father. Money does not create character. It exposes it. She thought of Michael's hand tightening on the carving knife. She thought of Lauren's diamonds catching the light. She thought of her mother's silence. She also thought of Lauren's voice, earlier in the evening, quick and low, a line most of the table had ignored. I grew up sharing one bedroom with two sisters, Lauren had said in passing, almost defensive, almost shaking. I promised myself my kids would not feel small. Emma had heard it. No one else had. She understood something then, and it did not feel like mercy. It felt like a decision. She stood. She rinsed her mug and set it in the sink. She gathered the graded essays into a neat pile. She turned off the lamp. The apartment fell into darkness, but the darkness did not scare her. She was not small, not anymore. Tomorrow, the family would walk into a conference room believing they were about to witness her removal. Tomorrow, they would learn who had actually been holding the power in her father's house all along. Emma lifted her chin. I will be there, she repeated into the empty room. And this time, her voice did not shake. The elevator doors slid open to a whisper of cold air and polished marble. The offices of Whitmore and Gray occupied the 23rd floor of a glass tower overlooking Boston, and that morning, the city below gleamed under a pale winter sun. Through the walls of windows, light spilled across steel and stone, sterile and perfect in architecture of order. Emma Carter stepped out, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She wore charcoal slacks, a cream sweater, and no jewelry. The receptionist, Sandra, looked up immediately and smiled, a warmth that felt genuine in a place where everything else looked measured. Good morning, Miss Carter, Sandra said. Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. Conference room 3. Thank you, Emma replied, her voice even, though her pulse was not. She crossed the corridor. Through the frosted glass panels ahead, she saw the silhouettes of 3 people already inside. Mr. Whitmore, Catherine Morrison from Trust Management, and David Park, the estate accountant. They stood by the windows, files in hand, their figures framed against the skyline like a courtroom waiting for its judge. When Emma entered, they greeted her with quiet respect. Whitmore, tall and silver-haired, shook her hand gently. Emma, he said, thank you for coming on such short notice. She nodded. You said it was important. It is. His tone carried the weight of something about to unfold. They exchanged a few formalities, coffee, traffic, weather, but no one lingered on small talk for long. The air in the room had a density to it, as if the truth itself had been waiting behind closed doors for too many years. At precisely 10 o'clock, the sound of laughter came from the hallway. The door opened. The Carter family entered like an entourage. Michael Carter led the way, his tailored navy suit crisp, his confidence radiant. Eleanor, elegant in a dark wool coat, followed closely, her chin high though her hands trembled faintly. Ryan came next, scrolling through his phone, pretending detachment, and Lauren, flawless as ever, stepped in last. Even her perfume announced wealth before her voice could. Richard, Michael said warmly, shaking the lawyer's hand as if greeting a longtime associate. Glad we could meet. Let us finalize this quickly, yes? I have a flight to catch this evening. Whitmore's expression remained neutral. Of course, Michael. Please, everyone, take your seats. The family settled on one side of the long mahogany table. Emma sat on the other, beside Whitmore and his associates. The distance between them was not just physical. It was 8 years deep. Michael leaned back, crossing his legs. I assume this is about the trust restructuring we discussed. Indeed, Whitmore replied, opening a leather folder with deliberate calm. Before we proceed, however, I need to clarify a few legal points for everyone's understanding. Michael waved a hand, impatient. Legal points are fine, but let us not waste time. The decision's already made. Whitmore's eyes met Emma's for half a second, then returned to the folder. Actually, he said, that is the issue at hand. Decisions regarding the trust can only be made by one individual, the designated trustee. Ryan frowned. That would be Mom, obviously. Eleanor nodded as if confirming it through sheer will. Whitmore's voice remained steady. No, Mrs. Carter is a beneficiary, not the trustee. The trust was established 8 years ago under the direction of the late Henry Carter. According to his signed documents, there is only one trustee with full authority over all assets, distributions, and financial decisions. Michael's tone sharpened. Then who? Whitmore lifted his gaze. Ms. Emma Carter. The words fell into the room like glass shattering in slow motion. Silence. Then the faintest sound, the soft creak of Eleanor's chair as she leaned back, her face draining of color. Ryan blinked rapidly, his mouth opening but producing no sound. Lauren's hand went instinctively to her necklace, gripping it as if it could anchor her to the world that had just tilted beneath her. Michael did not move. His fingers resting on the table curled slightly. His knuckles turned white. That is not possible, he said finally. You must be mistaken. Whitmore folded his hands over the folder. I assure you I am not. The trustee was appointed by Mr. Carter himself, 3 years before his passing. Ms. Carter has held that position since the trust's inception. Every major distribution, every investment approval, every property purchase, each one bears her authorization. Lauren's breath caught. Are you saying she has been signing everything? For 8 years? Catherine Morrison nodded. Every month, on time. With precision, Ryan's voice cracked. No one told us. Whitmore's tone softened only slightly. Mr. Carter wanted it that way. He trusted his eldest daughter to manage quietly, without interference. He believed that true stewardship requires humility, not display. Emma sat still, her palms flat on the table. Michael turned toward her, his voice rising. Is this true? She met his gaze. Yes. He pushed back his chair abruptly, the scrape echoing across the room. You? You have been managing the trust our family's fortune all this time? You teach middle school for heaven's sake. You drive a car that should have been scrapped years ago. Emma's voice remained calm, but a tremor of emotion passed beneath it, something like restrained fire. I teach because I love teaching. The car runs because I take care of it. And the trust has thrived because I managed it carefully. Ryan's face had turned a blotchy red. You kept this from us. Emma looked at him evenly. Dad kept it from you. I honored his request. Whitmore opened another folder, revealing several spreadsheets and sealed letters. The trust, currently valued at just over $8 million, has grown nearly 30% since its establishment. Under Ms. Carter's oversight, losses were avoided during 2 market downturns, and charitable contributions were maintained according to Mr. Carter's wishes. Michael's voice shook now, no longer with confidence, but disbelief. You cannot do this. I have been managing the family business. David Park spoke for the first time. Respectfully, Mr. Carter, the business operates under the trust. You have been receiving funding and approval from Ms. Carter's office each fiscal quarter. Eleanor turned toward her daughter, her eyes wide, wounded. Emma, why would he do this? Why would your father trust you over us? Emma met her mother's gaze and answered softly, because he knew I would never confuse money with worth. The silence that followed was a living thing. Lauren's hand trembled. The diamonds around her neck glinted under the fluorescent lights, but the glow seemed colder now. Michael sank back into his chair, his shoulders stiff. So what happens now? He asked, voice brittle. Whitmore closed the folder with a quiet snap. That depends entirely on Ms. Carter. Every eye turned toward her. Emma inhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. The years of dismissal, the laughter at her expense, the hollow pity they were all here now, seated across from her. But she did not speak from anger. She spoke from something far deeper. "Last night," she said quietly, "you told me I would never see a penny of Dad's money." Michael's jaw tightened. "You were right," she continued. "I have been giving the pennies to you all along." The sentence landed with the precision of a scalpel. Whitmore slid 3 thick binders toward her. "These," he said, "are the proposed restructuring options we discussed." Emma placed a hand on the top file. The cover page bore the title, "Reallocation Plan, Carter Family Trust." "From this point forward," she said, her voice steady, "the trust will be managed according to need, not greed. Every allowance, every expense, every indulgence will be reviewed." Eleanor's lips parted, but no words came. Ryan's phone slipped from his hand and hit the table with a dull sound. Lauren looked at her husband, eyes wide, silently begging for something he could not give her. Michael's voice was barely audible. "Emma, please, let us talk about this." She looked at him for a long moment, then stood. The city skyline blazed behind her, light reflecting off the glass like fractured truth. "You thought you inherited power," she said softly. "I inherited Dad's integrity." The room was utterly still. No one spoke. The clock on the wall ticked once, loud and final. The sun had shifted across the glass walls of the conference room, turning the city outside into molten gold. The silence after Emma's words was immense, like the moment before thunder breaks. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Michael sat rigid, his face pale beneath the perfect polish of his confidence. Ryan's eyes darted between his sister and the lawyer, searching for a foothold that no longer existed. Lauren stared at the gleaming tabletop, her hands trembling slightly, diamonds flickering with each tremor. Eleanor, once the matriarch who commanded every gathering, looked suddenly smaller inside her designer coat, her voice gone quiet. Whitmore closed the final folder before him and stood. "The administrative portion of this meeting is concluded. The remainder is at Ms. Carter's discretion." Then he and his team quietly gathered their papers, bowed their heads, and left. The door shut behind them with a gentle click that sounded almost ceremonial. Now there were only the Carters left. For a long time, no one spoke. Emma rose slowly from her chair. Her shadow stretched across the table, the same table where her father had once signed his first contracts, where she had played with crayons as a child while he calculated risks with the patience of a craftsman. Now it was her turn to draw new lines. "The distributions," she began, her voice measured but resolute, "will be adjusted." Michael opened his mouth, but she raised her hand, and the gesture alone silenced him. "Marcus Carter, $25,000 a month," she said softly. "Effective immediately, reduced to 15. The beach house will be sold. You will find housing within your new budget." Michael's throat worked as he swallowed. "Emma, she met his eyes. "No speeches. Not today." Turning slightly, she looked at her younger brother. "Ryan, 22,000 a month, reduced to 12. Your startup has 6 months to become profitable. After that, its funding ends. It is time you learn what building something means." Ryan's bravado broke. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Understood." Emma's gaze shifted to her mother. The woman who had once been unshakable was trembling now, clutching her pearl necklace like an anchor in rough seas. "Mother," Emma said, and the word came out softer than she expected. "Your allowance will drop from 30,000 to 20. The gala is canceled. That money will fund the Carter Scholarship for underprivileged students, exactly what Dad intended." Eleanor's lips parted. "Emma, sweetheart, please." It was the first time she had called her that in years. Her voice cracked on the word. Emma's own throat tightened, but she did not waver. "I am not punishing you," she said. "I am giving you a chance to remember who you were before the money." Lauren's composure finally fractured. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. She began, voice breaking. "I just did not want my children to feel small again. I grew up sharing one bedroom with 2 sisters. I promised myself they would never know that kind of life." Emma's expression softened. For the first time that morning, her voice carried warmth. Teach them that kindness makes you bigger, Lauren. That is a lesson money cannot buy. The silence that followed was heavy but cleansing. The kind of silence that rebuilds after destruction. Emma gathered her folders. All changes take effect immediately. Whitmore will provide updated documentation this afternoon. She paused, her eyes moving across the faces of her family, faces she had known since childhood, now shadowed by shame and dawning humility. You have 6 months. Show me that you understand what legacy truly means. No one stopped her as she walked to the door. The sound of her footsteps echoed down the hallway like the slow beating of a drum. The months that followed were quiet ones. Michael sold the beach house. The glossy photos vanished from real estate websites, replaced by a modest apartment near the city center. One morning, Emma received an anonymous donation receipt from a scholarship fund, $50,000 made in the name of an anonymous donor. She knew the handwriting on the envelope. Ryan enrolled in business courses at the local college, sitting in classrooms with students 10 years younger. For the first time, he worked late not because he had to impress investors, but because he was genuinely learning. Eleanor wrote a letter. The handwriting was elegant but unsteady. I forgot what your father valued most, it read. I see it in you now. I hope one day you can forgive me for mistaking pride for love. Lauren moved her children into a smaller home. On social media, gone were the lavish brunches and designer gowns. Instead, there was a photograph Lauren sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, her son building a castle out of cardboard boxes. Her smile was smaller but somehow more real, and through it all, Emma never mentioned the trust again. Spring came. The city thawed. In her classroom, sunlight streamed through tall windows, painting golden shapes across the chalkboard. Emma sat at her desk, grading essays. The topic she had assigned was one her father would have approved of. What does success mean to you? She opened one paper, Maria, age 13. The first line caught her breath. Success is being someone others can count on. Emma's vision blurred for a moment. She smiled through it, her lips trembling slightly. She wrote in the margin, beautiful insight, Maria, never forget this. Her father's words returned to her like a steady echo. Money does not create character. It exposes it. She whispered the line aloud, letting it fill the quiet room. It was not a lesson anymore. It was a truth. That evening, her phone rang. Michael's name glowed on the screen. She hesitated before answering. Emma, he said, his voice subdued, stripped of its usual confidence. I wanted to say thank you for not destroying us. Her tone was calm, distant but not cruel. You destroyed yourselves, Michael. I am just giving you a chance to rebuild. He was silent for a moment. Then softly, you taught me what family means. Emma looked out the window. The last light of the day stretched across the horizon like fire over water. You taught me that family means loyalty, she said. I am just returning the lesson. The line went quiet. Then she ended the call. Outside, the world was turning gold again. The sky was full of light, the kind that makes everything shimmer before it fades. Emma drove her old Camry through the tree-lined streets, past the gates of the neighborhoods her family once bragged about. The houses were beautiful, but their beauty no longer touched her. She understood now that luxury without love was just decoration. As the city lights flickered on, she whispered into the soft hum of the car, Dad left me more than money. He left me clarity about what family really means. The road ahead opened, long and calm. The camera of imagination would follow her car until it became a small, steady light, moving through dusk, quiet, constant, unwavering. Because true legacy, she realized, was not what you built for yourself. It was what remained of your character when everything else was stripped away. When the echoes of wealth and pride finally fade, what remains is the sound of truth, the quiet pulse of integrity beating beneath everything else. The true legacy was never about an inheritance measured in millions. It was about the invisible wealth that shapes who we become when no one is watching. Emma Carter's story reminds us that dignity does not need an audience, and strength does not require noise. She sat at the far end of the table for years, mocked for her simplicity, dismissed for her modest life, and still she chose restraint over revenge, substance over spectacle. In doing so, she revealed the purest kind of power, the power that grows from self-respect. There is a moment in every life when silence is mistaken for weakness, yet it is often silence that hides the deepest resolve. Emma's quiet grace did not come from submission. It came from understanding that true authority is not about controlling others, it is about mastering yourself. Money exposes character, her father once said, and he was right. It is easy to look generous when you have plenty. It is easy to seem kind when the world expects you to be. But when comfort is stripped away, when reputation falls silent, when no one stands behind you, that is when you meet your real self. Perhaps that is the lesson her story leaves behind, that what we inherit is not wealth, but wisdom. Not luxury, but legacy. Not comfort, but conscience. The family she faced was not evil. They were simply lost, blinded by the glitter of success until they forgot that worth is never written on a balance sheet. We all build our legacies, piece by piece, in the choices we make each day, in the way we treat the people who cannot repay us, in the patience we show when cruelty would be easier, and in the quiet moments when no one sees what we choose to do. So, as you step away from this story, ask yourself, what will your legacy be? When everything else is gone, when the noise, the applause, and the trophies fade, what will remain of you that cannot be bought, borrowed, or taken away? If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. Tell us what legacy means to you, because your words might be the reminder someone else needs tonight. And if you want to hear more stories that reveal the quiet truths hidden inside ordinary lives, stay with us. Subscribe, not just to the channel, but to the kind of stories that make you feel, reflect, and remember who you are beneath everything the world tells you to be. Because in the end, the greatest inheritance we can ever leave behind is not money, or power, or fame. It is the proof that we lived with honesty, with courage, and with heart.